Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel and welcome to my April reading wrap-up. I'm hoping that this month I have found the format that is going to work for me for these wrap-ups because it's been a little bit of a mess for the start of the year, but you know, it's a learning curve and 4 months in, maybe I've made some progress. For those of you who don't know, I'm filming a little bit differently to I have in previous years. I used to do weekly wrap-ups, which was a lot easier in terms of remembering content, but a lot harder in terms of filming load and content. And I've moved to more vlog style for a lot of things, project style kind of videos. And then I have my monthly wrap up to kind of sum up the month. So from now on, we are hopefully going to have a handy dandy graphic, which I'm going to put up on the screen now, where you can see every single book that I read this month. And now I'm going to black out all of the books that I have featured in videos that have already gone up or are coming out over the next month or so. And what you should be able to see are the books that are left that I have not talked about anywhere. So they're the books that we're going to talk about today. All right, we are going to start with Hello Stranger by Katherine, which is a book that I've had on my TBR for a while. And this is a contemporary romance story. Our main character is Sadie. She is finally getting to live out her dream. She has been selected to enter a piece into a, what was it called? The North American Portrait Society competition. She's about to celebrate this and then she is involved in a road accident. She's hit by a car and she wakes up in hospital and she can no longer recognize people's faces. So she has face blindness. And this obviously causes her a fair amount of issues with her painting and her portraiture because that was what she made her living off of. And while she is recovering from this, she ends up meeting two different guys. She really likes both of them. They're both really different. One is a vet, the other is someone who lives in her apartment block, and she finds herself in this love triangle situation, except maybe it's not. And if you can read between the lines of the story, you might be able to tell where this story is going. It was really interesting. I mean, Katherine is just a really solid writer. Like there's nothing offensive in it. There's nothing that particularly stands out either, but her writing is just kind of lovely to read as Sadie is trying to figure out what her life looks like now. And, you know, Sadie is the central character. There is a romance that is a big part of the plot, but the biggest part of the plot is sort of Sadie's recovery and learning whether or not she's ever going to regain the ability to recognize people's faces and what she does with this portraiture competition and whether or not her worth is tied to her success. So that was a really interesting book to read, and I'm glad that I finally picked it up because I do find Katherine just to be a really solid author that I can pick up and read and know that I will enjoy something about the book. Then I read Among Friends by Annabeth Elle. This is part of the Mount Hope series, from memory, and this is the relationship between Tennessee and Tate. It is a queer novella length story about two guys who are recovering from accidents. One works as an EMT. Someone ends up with an ice skating injury and breaking wrists. It's a very low angst, hurt comfort kind of story. I think it's also set around Valentine's Day. Like it's just a very easy read, which at that point in the month, I'm pretty sure I needed just to break up everything else that I was reading. Then I read a book that I have heard a lot about and I've been really excited to read. And it is The Favourites by Layne Fargo. And I love this edition of the book. Like this is the UK one. I think the US cover is more gold, but I absolutely adore the colors in this. So this is a figure skating romance, maybe. It's a very complex sort of relationship that our two main characters have with Katerina and Heath. And they have known each other since they're children. When they first meet, Heath, I think, is in foster care, and Katerina comes from a household where her mother has left, her father at one point dies, and her brother is left as her guardian, and he's very controlling and basically spends all their money. Katerina's only solace is that she is an incredible figure skater. She ends up taking Heath under her wing, and the two begin training together, and they become close as close. And they scrape together enough money to go out to Los Angeles and end up training at this elite facility with Katerina's figure skating idol. And it's very much sort of the dark side of professional sports, the expectations that people place on you, the trauma that has on people's lives, the push and the will to be the best and how that impacts every relationship around you. Heath and Katerina love each other, but at times it can be quite toxic, their relationship, because Katerina is determined to be the best. She wants to be the world champion, and Heath is kind of going along on the ride because he loves her. And the entire story of these two is told from the point of view of a documentary that is being made about their lives and their career and the controversy that surrounded them. And through interviews and snippets of stories, we find out how their story unfolds. And it was a really wild ride. I did really thoroughly enjoy it though. It's like one of those stories where you know that it can't possibly end the way that you would like it to end because of everything that's happening, but you cannot look away from it. It's that kind of story. Then I read Well Written by Elle Sprinkle, which is an romance story. It is set in a small town. It is the second chance romance between a bookstore owner and an author. And the bookstore owner happens to be the biggest fan of this author, but he doesn't realize that author is his childhood best friend who they had a very big falling out over the past. And so they're confronted when he comes back to town. This had all the cozy vibes of a bookstore and bookish people falling in love. There are, some content warnings in here for internalized and external homophobia. There is severe depression, mentions of suicidal ideation, but otherwise it was actually just a really lovely little story. And I can't remember how I stumbled across this book. It just somehow turned up in my collection, as do many books. Then I reread Burn for Me by Ilona Andrews. The audiobook for this came out, and so I had to listen to it. It is the first book in Nevada's trilogy. It is her first crossing paths with Mad Rogan as they are trying to track down a pyrokinetic who is wreaking havoc on the city. This book and this relationship is the ultimate morality chain. It is delightful. The graphic audio is phenomenal, and I may or may not already be re-listening to it currently for the second time. Then I read 2 novellas from Evie Mitchell that I purchased ages ago but haven't had a chance to kind of go back and reread. So there was Hurt Me, which is a prequel to the Nameless Souls series, which is a post-pandemic dystopian world, so just be aware of that. It does deal with a pandemic-ridden world, and in this case the pandemic is just starting to flare up. That's why it's the prequel to the series, and we are following Jules, who is at the wake of one of her best friends who has died from cancer, and her best friend was the daughter of an MC member, I'm pretty sure. So it's being held at one of the clubs. She is just overcome by the entire thing. She's grieving, she is upset, and she ends up running into her friend's brother who belongs to a rival MC group. His name is Ben, or he goes by Pope. And it is just a very short, steamy interaction and one night stand between the two of them before the world ends. It was kind of nice to get the backstory of these characters because they are in the main series, and it's nice to have the story of where they've started. And then I also read another novella, this time I think it's in the Larson sibling series, which is With This Viking I Thee Wed, which is Sun and Gemma's story. Sun places an ad in the local newspaper. He's looking for a wife. He wants it to be a business transaction. It's purely, a business deal sort of thing. And Gemma ends up responding to the ad, telling him off, saying that this is just a ridiculous way of trying to find a wife. And this challenges him, and so he decides to pursue her. And she is very skeptical, and they end up in a kind of marriage of convenience or fake marriage in order to see who is actually right in this situation. Can a marriage contract turn into something more, or do you actually need more than that for the basis of a solid relationship? It's short, it's sweet. They end up snowed in with only one bed, which we love that. Great trope. It's only 68 pages long, and I had a fun time with it. It was nice to also see these characters because it's been a while since I've read some of the Larson sibling books. And then the lucky last book that I read was Leo and Ralph by Peter Carnavas. This is a middle fiction story. This is delightful. It is about Leo, who has an imaginary friend, Ralph. This is Ralph. And Leo doesn't like making friends. It makes him uncomfortable and nervous, and so he has Ralph. And his parents are concerned by this, and he has Ralph for many, many years. And then eventually Leo's family has to move, and Ralph isn't coming along. And so Leo has to start at a new school, he has to make new friends, and it's all going well, except his parents don't know that Leo has done a deal with Ralph, that Ralph is going to turn up in this new location. It's a really lovely story of how friends can be made, how the people you least expect to become really good friends can become good friends, how you can share your interests and your hobbies with them. It was a really beautiful little story. Peter Carnavas always writes really lovely stories, and it's just a really great way to talk about relationships and friendships and feeling safe. And also I quite liked how the parents handled the imaginary friend. Leo's dad was probably a little bit more uncomfortable with that idea because he has expectations and ideas of what his son should be doing, but the mother is actually quite supportive. And even when Ralph turns up again and Leo has little tells that they recognize to say that he's there, she understands. And she talks to him about that understanding and tries to help him find ways of connecting with the people around him as well, which I appreciate. So that is my monthly wrap up. Okay, in terms of stats for the month, I read a total of 51 books, 12,169 pages. I was mostly reading romance books. So I had 27 romance books, 7 science fiction books, 10 fiction books, and then a fantasy, a speculative, and a couple of urban fantasy thrown in for good measure. My largest subcategory in romance or subgenre in romance was paranormal romance, because we had the Love in the Night readathon happening. And then if you have a look at the pie charts, you can kind of see what I was reading, the different formats. I was 50-50 on queer rep this month, which was great. 22% had various health rep, 16% had disability rep, so still some work to do there. And I was mostly reading books I owned, so not as many KU titles this month. I still had some, but yeah. Those are the stats for that. If we do a check-in for the bingo board from hell, I have read 49% of my pre-2025 TBR, so I'm nearly at 50%, which is great because we're not even halfway through the year yet. I've read 38 audiobooks out of 75. I've filmed and uploaded 5 try-chapter videos out of 12. I completed the Something Wicked series by Elise Hay, which takes me to 4 completed series out of 12. I did read 80% of my monthly TBR. I am up to 35 middle grade or young adult books for the year out of 50. I'm at 65.7% for my 2025 physical TBR out of my 75% goal. I didn't read any non-fiction books really in the month. I mean, technically A View from the Stars could be potentially viewed as fiction. It's kind of both, but I didn't count it as a non-fiction because it was not fully non-fiction. So that's no change at 10 out of 20 books. And I've read 46 out of 52 of the main 52 book club challenge prompts. That's where I am. So that's everything for April. Like, it was a really good reading month. In the comments, I'd love to know what you have been reading. What was your favorite book of the month? Feel free to let me know in the comments. Otherwise, feel free to leave. What can we leave? I don't know. I used to look these things up before I filmed videos, but now I'm gonna have to do it now. Feel free to leave an ice skate emoji for the favorites, because that was a wild ride. That's all I can say about that book. It was absolutely nuts. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.